In the quiet town of Millfield, Pennsylvania, the echoes of a mystery have lingered for nearly 4 decades. In 1984, a promising young man named Marcus Johnson vanished without a trace, leaving behind a family shattered by grief and unanswered questions. The day Marcus disappeared was a typical summer afternoon. He had plans to meet friends after work, but those plans were never fulfilled. His mother, Elaine, recalls the moment she realized something was terribly wrong. The clock ticked, the sun set, and as darkness enveloped their home, dread began to settle in. Weeks turned into months, and the hope of finding Marcus faded, replaced by the painful reality of a life lived in the shadow of uncertainty. Elaine Johnson dedicated herself to finding her son, tirelessly searching every lead, reaching out to law enforcement, and advocating for media coverage. Despite her relentless efforts, no concrete evidence surfaced, and the investigation grew cold. As years slipped by, the case became just another statistic in the annals of unsolved disappearances, a silent wound that never fully healed. Then, in 2023, a startling turn of events would breathe new life into this decades-old mystery. A federal investigation into judicial corruption led to the arrest of a judge with connections to the case. Among the documents uncovered in the investigation was a dusty file containing evidence that had never been properly examined. This discovery sent shockwaves through the community and reignited the flames of hope within Elaine. It was a clue that could change everything, a glimmer of light in a long, dark tunnel. As the news broke, Elaine found herself drawn back into the world she had tried so hard to leave behind. The reopening of the case was a bittersweet moment, as she was thrust back into the heartache of her son's disappearance. Determined to uncover the truth, she began to sift through the old evidence and the new information that had come to light. With each step forward, she faced skepticism from authorities who had long since moved on, voices of doubt whispering that the past should remain undisturbed. Yet Elaine was undeterred. She had fought for nearly 40 years, and this new lead was a lifeline, a chance to finally piece together the puzzle of Marcus's fate. She knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, but the prospect of justice fueled her determination. As she delved deeper into the investigation, she began to uncover a complex web of secrets that surrounded her son's life, revealing a hidden side of Marcus that even Elaine had not fully understood. What had seemed a simple disappearance soon became a story steeped in intrigue, involving individuals whose lives intertwined with Marcus's in ways that could only be described as sinister. The more Elaine uncovered, the more she realized that the truth behind Marcus's disappearance was buried under layers of deception, betrayal, and perhaps even a conspiracy that extended far beyond her small town. In the coming weeks, Elaine's journey would take her through the darkest corners of Millfield, as she navigated a landscape riddled with doubt and danger. With every revelation, she was forced to confront the possibility that not everyone in her son's life had been who they claimed to be. Elaine's heart was heavy with the knowledge that her son had been living a life that she was unaware of, one that may have placed him in perilous situations. As she pieced together the clues, she realized that the answers she sought were tangled in a narrative that was both heartbreaking and shocking. The twist in this tale was far from simple. As Elaine investigated Marcus's relationships, a pattern began to emerge, one that hinted at a dark truth hidden beneath the surface of their seemingly idyllic community. Friends turned to strangers, allies into adversaries, and Elaine found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about the people surrounding her son. As the clock ticks on this decades-old case, Elaine stands at the precipice of discovery, propelled by a fierce maternal love that refuses to be extinguished. The journey ahead promises to be fraught with danger, as she confronts the ghosts of the past and grapples with the painful reality of what it means to truly seek the truth. In the following parts of this series, we will delve deeper into the investigation, examining the evidence that has surfaced, the people who have emerged from the shadows, and the haunting secrets that have long been buried in Millfield. But first, we must understand the depth of Elaine's pain, the determination that drives her forward, and the hope that now flickers in her heart. A hope that, after 39 long years, she may finally uncover the truth about what happened to Marcus Johnson. Elaine knew that to find Marcus, she would need to peel back the layers of the community's facade. With each person she spoke to, she felt the weight of silence pressing down harder. Those who once called themselves friends seemed to shift uncomfortably at the mention of Marcus's name, their eyes darting away as if they feared the question she might ask next. The first lead came from a faded photograph she stumbled upon while going through old family albums. It was a picture of Marcus with a group of friends at a local party just weeks before his disappearance. The image was grainy, the faces barely recognizable, but one man stood out to Elaine, a man she had never seen before. He was tall, with a distinctive tattoo peeking from under his sleeve, a mark that seemed to call out to her. She felt a surge of determination. This was someone she needed to find. Digging deeper, Elaine learned that this stranger was known as Tony Ray, a local who had a reputation for being involved in less-than-legal activities. Though many had seen him as a harmless troublemaker, whispers suggested a darker side. Rumors of violent encounters, threats, and even connections to a local gang. The more Elaine unearthed, the more she felt the chilling grip of fear. This was not just a missing persons case, it was entwined with a world she had never wanted to acknowledge. Elaine reached out to Tony Ray, hoping for a chance to confront him. She found him at a bar on the outskirts of Millfield, a dive where the air was thick with smoke and regret. As she approached, she could feel the eyes of the patrons on her, judging, questioning her audacity. But she pressed on, her heart racing as she asked about Marcus. His dismissive laughter sent a shiver down her spine. "Why do you care? He's gone, lady. Let it be." But his eyes held a flicker of something, fear, perhaps, that made her blood run cold. She noticed the tattoo on his arm, and felt the pieces of her investigation snap into place. As Elaine left the bar, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just scratched the surface of something much darker. She needed to dig deeper, to connect the dots between Tony and the night Marcus vanished. But as she delved into the shadows, the walls around her began to close in. With each new lead, Elaine faced growing resistance. Friends turned their backs, and some even warned her to stop digging. The authorities seemed disinterested, as if the case had become just another ghost haunting the past. It was clear that she was not welcome in this quest for truth, and yet the fire of determination within her only grew stronger. As the pieces fell into place, Elaine discovered that Tony Ray had been tied to more than just petty crime. Rumors of a cover-up began to surface, linking him to powerful figures in the community who had much to lose if the truth about Marcus came to light. Now, with Tony's name whispered in the shadows and the threat of exposure looming, Elaine stood on the brink of a revelation that could shatter everything. She had one chance to confront him, to unveil the truth hidden behind layers of deceit. But as she prepared to face the darkness, she could not shake the sense that the real danger was only just beginning. In a town steeped in secrets, who could she trust? And what would the cost be to uncover the truth about her son's disappearance? The pieces were falling into place, but the picture they formed was one she never expected. Elaine knew she had to act quickly. With every passing day, the fear that someone would silence her grew stronger. The whispers of corruption and cover-up engulfed her like a shroud. She began reaching out to old friends of Marcus, hoping they could provide insights or connections to those who might know more about Tony Ray's involvement. Many of them hesitated, wary of the potential backlash. Some outright refused to speak, their eyes darting nervously as if someone were watching. But Elaine pressed on, driven by a mother's love and the relentless need for closure. Each conversation brought a new fragment of the puzzle, painting a portrait of a young man who had dreams, aspirations, and a future abruptly stolen from him. One name kept surfacing amid the fragments: Gerald Hines, a former partner of Tony Ray, known for his connections to the criminal underbelly of the town. The more Elaine learned about Hines, the more she realized that confronting him was essential. She gathered enough courage to seek him out, knowing that doing so could open doors but also put her in danger. After weeks of searching, Elaine found Hines at a local bar, cloaked in shadows and surrounded by a group of tough-looking patrons. As she approached, her heart raced. The air was thick with tension, and she could feel eyes on her, judging her, questioning her resolve. She had rehearsed this moment, yet nothing could prepare her for the confrontation. As she sat down across from him, Hines looked up, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly, like gravel crunching underfoot. "I want to know what happened to my son," Elaine replied, her voice steady despite the storm brewing within her. "I know Tony Ray was involved, and you know something about it." He chuckled, a dark, mocking sound that sent chills down her spine. "You think you can just waltz in here and demand answers? You have no idea what you're messing with." But Elaine pressed on, refusing to back down. She laid out what she had learned, the connections to the powerful figures, the whispers of a cover-up, and the pain that had lingered for decades. For a moment she saw a flicker of something in Hines' eyes, fear, perhaps, or maybe respect for her tenacity. Then, without warning, the atmosphere shifted. Hines leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You think you're the only one looking for the truth. There are those who don't want this to come out. You need to tread carefully, lady." The warning hung heavy in the air, and Elaine felt a chill run down her spine. What was he hinting at? What kind of danger was she truly in? She realized that the deeper she dug, the more perilous her path became. Leaving the bar, Elaine was filled with a mix of adrenaline and dread. She had uncovered more than just a lead. She had stumbled into a web of deceit that threatened to ensnare her. As she began to connect the dots, one question loomed over her. Who could be trusted in a town where everyone seemed to have something to hide? With the confrontation fresh in her mind, Elaine knew she had to decide her next move wisely. Every step forward could either bring her closer to the truth or put her in the crosshairs of those who would do anything to keep their secrets buried. In the shadows, those who wished to maintain their silence were already watching her, and the stakes were rising. As she prepared for the next phase of her investigation, Elaine realized she was no longer just a mother seeking answers. She was now a player in a dangerous game where the price of truth could be her very life. Elaine's hands trembled as she clutched the faded photograph she had found in the old box. Each detail in the picture seemed to pulse with significance: an old diner, a familiar face, a moment frozen in time. She had learned that the man in the photograph had vanished shortly after her daughter, and his name kept surfacing in her research. With her heart racing, she knew she had to find out more about him, a connection that could either lead her to the truth or into deeper peril. She spent the next few days piecing together the clues, combing through public records, and reaching out to people who might still remember him. Many were reluctant to discuss the past, their faces clouded with a mix of fear and resignation. The whispers of the town's history grew louder in her mind, as if the very streets were warning her to turn back. But Elaine's resolve hardened. She couldn't retreat now. Her daughter's memory demanded justice. As she continued her investigation, Elaine uncovered a disturbing trend. Multiple disappearances linked to the same diner had been reported over the years, all involving young black individuals, dismissed as mere coincidence by local authorities. The deeper she dug, the more she realized that these cases were not isolated incidents, but part of a sinister pattern. Each thread she pulled revealed a tapestry of secrets that wove through the very fabric of the community. However, with each new discovery, she felt the weight of intimidation closing in around her. Strange vehicles began to appear outside her home, and she noticed familiar faces lingering in the shadows. It became clear that someone was keeping tabs on her, someone who did not want the past to resurface. The anxiety gnawed at her, yet her determination only intensified. She had to confront these hidden truths, no matter the cost. One evening, while reviewing her notes in a local cafe, she overheard a hushed conversation between two men at the next table. Their words were laced with anxiety as they discussed the judge, a name that sent a jolt through her. Was it the same judge whose arrest had reignited her investigation? Curiosity piqued, Elaine leaned in closer, trying to catch every word. Their voices grew more urgent, and it became clear they were not just talking about a judge. They were discussing a cover-up that ran much deeper. Elaine felt her heart race as she realized she might be on the cusp of uncovering a dark truth. The pieces of the puzzle were aligning, but she was still missing the crucial element: who was truly behind the disappearances, and how far would they go to keep their secrets hidden? In that moment, she resolved to confront the judge directly. She understood the risks, but she also knew the truth could not remain buried. With a plan forming in her mind, Elaine steeled herself for what lay ahead. The confrontation would be fraught with danger, but it was a step she needed to take. She would either find the answers she sought or uncover a darkness that had long haunted the town. As she prepared for the confrontation, she could feel the tension thickening in the air, an electric anticipation that signaled the arrival of the moment she had long awaited. Each heartbeat echoed her determination. She was ready to face whatever awaited her in the shadows. Elaine stood outside the courthouse, her breath forming small clouds in the crisp air. The building loomed before her, a monument to justice, but she felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Today it felt like a fortress protecting secrets buried beneath decades of silence. As she entered the building, she recalled the conversations she had overheard. The whispers of a cover-up, of people in power acting with impunity, filled her mind with dread. She knew she was walking into a den of wolves, but for every ounce of fear there was a corresponding surge of resolve. She approached the judge's office, her heart pounding in her chest. Elaine had spent sleepless nights preparing for this moment, strategizing every word she would say. She knocked softly, then pushed the door open without waiting for a response. Inside, the judge sat behind his desk, a man with a polished exterior, his demeanor exuding confidence. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face, quickly masked by a practiced composure. "Ms. Turner," he greeted, his voice smooth as silk. "What brings you here?" Elaine felt a surge of anger at his casual tone. "I know more than you think," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I know about the cover-up. I know about what happened to my brother." For a moment she could see the flicker of fear in his eyes, quickly replaced by a defensive bravado. "You should be careful with your accusations, Elaine. There are consequences for spreading lies." But she pressed on. "They're not lies. I have evidence, witnesses. You can't intimidate me into silence anymore." His expression hardened. "You think you know the truth, but you're only scratching the surface. There are forces at work here that you don't understand. You're playing a dangerous game." Elaine's pulse quickened. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. "What are you saying? What do you know about the disappearances?" He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "It's not what I know. It's what you'll never know. Some truths are best left buried. You think you're unearthing justice, but all you're doing is digging your own grave." As the tension escalated, Elaine's mind raced. His cryptic warning felt like a threat, a warning that the truth was entangled in something much darker than she had anticipated. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I won't back down. You owe it to the families who suffered." The judge smirked, an unsettling grin that sent a chill down her spine. "And what if I told you that seeking justice could lead you to a place you're not prepared to go? You think you've seen darkness, but you have no idea what lies ahead." Elaine felt the weight of his words settle over her like a shroud. She realized that this was not just a confrontation, it was a warning shot across the bow of her investigation. As she left the office, determination coursed through her veins. She understood now that she was not just fighting against a single individual. She was challenging a web of deceit that stretched far beyond her brother's disappearance. But with each step, the stakes grew higher. She needed to gather more evidence, to connect the dots that linked the judge to the shadowy figures he hinted at. Time was of the essence, and danger loomed closer than ever. The truth was out there, but Elaine knew she had to tread carefully. With new resolve, she set out to uncover the connections that could either lead her to the answers she sought or pull her deeper into the darkness that threatened to consume her. Elaine immersed herself in research, combing through public records and archives, piecing together her brother's life before he vanished. The judge's smirk echoed in her mind, a reminder that the truth was likely buried beneath layers of deception. Days turned into weeks as she delved deeper into the past. She discovered that her brother had been involved in a community organization, fighting for social justice, a cause that had made him enemies in a world rife with corruption. The further she dug, the more the pieces began to fit together, revealing a tangled web of interests that aligned with the judge's ominous warnings. She reached out to former colleagues of her brother, hoping to find someone who could shed light on his last days. To her surprise, one individual, a close friend named Marcus, agreed to meet. As they sat in a dimly lit cafe, Elaine sensed that Marcus was holding back. His eyes darted around the room, and his voice trembled as he spoke. "I didn't know how deep it went until it was too late," he confessed, staring into his coffee. "Your brother was onto something big. He had discovered something that could shake the very foundation of our community." Elaine's heart raced. "What do you mean? What did he find?" Marcus hesitated, clearly torn between fear and loyalty. "He mentioned names. People you wouldn't believe would be involved. The judge, yes, but others too. They were powerful, and they didn't take kindly to threats." As Elaine pressed for details, a sense of urgency washed over her. She needed to know who these people were and how they might connect to her brother's disappearance. Marcus's reluctance worried her, but she could see the determination in his eyes. He knew too much to remain silent. After a long pause, he leaned closer, lowering his voice. He was working on exposing a corruption scheme tied to the local government. But then he disappeared, and I've been living in fear ever since. Elaine's mind raced. Was it possible that her brother's fight for justice had cost him his life? The implications were staggering. She had to act fast. With newfound urgency, she returned home, determined to uncover every connection. As she pieced together the puzzle, Elaine stumbled upon a digital footprint, a series of emails between her brother and an anonymous source. The subject line read, "The truth about the judge." Her heart pounded as she opened the emails, revealing discussions of illicit activities and the names of potential accomplices. But just as she was about to uncover the last piece of evidence, the screen went dark. Her chilling realization hit her. Someone was watching. The stakes had risen dramatically. She was no longer just an investigator. She was a target. Yet Elaine knew she couldn't turn back now. The pieces were almost in place, but the looming threat of exposure hung over her like a dark cloud. As she prepared to confront the judge with this new information, Elaine steeled herself for what lay ahead. The truth was within reach, but the danger was palpable. What she would uncover next could change everything. Elaine took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. She knew that confronting the judge would be dangerous, but the truth about her brother's disappearance demanded action. With the emails fresh in her mind, she set out to find allies in her quest for justice. Her first stop was the local library, where she hoped to dig deeper into the judge's past. As she scoured through old newspapers and court records, she noticed a pattern, a series of cases that had mysteriously been dismissed or overlooked. Each case involved individuals with connections to the judge, and each dismissal seemed to benefit someone else, casting a shadow of corruption that lingered ominously over the legal system. As she pored over the records, a name kept surfacing: Daniel Grayson. A former defendant, his case had been closed under dubious circumstances. He had vanished shortly after his trial, leaving behind a family desperate for answers. Elaine's intuition kicked in. Could there be a link between Daniel and her brother? Determined to pursue this new lead, she reached out to Daniel's sister, who shared her own suspicions about the judge. "He was involved in something bigger than we realized," she said. "I think they were protecting him, and they knew too much about each other." As Elaine absorbed this information, she felt the weight of the conspiracy tightening around her. The judge wasn't just a corrupt official. He was a key figure in a much larger scheme, one that likely implicated several others who had remained above suspicion for too long. With each revelation, the danger escalated. Elaine began to notice unfamiliar vehicles parked near her home, shadows lurking just beyond her line of sight. It became increasingly clear that she was not just a curious sister. She was a threat to those who wished to keep the truth buried. But she pressed on, driven by the memory of her brother and the hope of unearthing the real story. She reached out to investigative journalists who had previously covered stories involving the judge, sharing the emails and her findings. As they began to look into her claims, she felt a flicker of hope. Yet the more she uncovered, the more urgent her situation became. A warning came through a cryptic voicemail, chilling in its clarity. "Stop looking into things that don't concern you, or you'll regret it." The threat was clear, and Elaine had to weigh her next move carefully. With the deadline of the upcoming trial for the judge looming, she knew she had to act fast. She planned to confront him, to demand answers, and hold him accountable. But she also knew she needed proof, something undeniable to back her claims. As she pieced together her final strategy, a sense of foreboding washed over her. What awaited her in that confrontation? Could she really uncover the truth, or was she stepping into a trap, set by those who would do anything to silence her? The answers were tantalizingly close, yet the danger was palpable. Elaine stood on the brink of revealing a dark secret that had been buried for decades. As the day of the confrontation approached, the stakes had never been higher. She was ready to face whatever came next, but the shadows still loomed, and the truth was steeped in darkness. As the trial date neared, Elaine's heart raced with a mix of determination and dread. Each day brought a new wave of anxiety, the cryptic voicemail echoing in her mind like a sinister mantra. The judge, the very person she believed held the key to her brother's disappearance, was preparing to take the stand, and Elaine knew she had to act before he had the chance to deflect suspicion away from himself. She spent hours poring over old case files, meticulously cataloguing every detail, every lead, and every witness statement. Her living room became a war room, a chaotic blend of newspaper clippings and photographs, each piece a thread leading her closer to the truth. A common theme emerged. Several people had come forward over the years with their suspicions about the judge, but those leads had vanished into the abyss of indifference. As the trial date approached, Elaine reached out to a local investigative journalist, someone who had covered the judge's previous cases extensively. She hoped that together they could shine a light on the discrepancies that had long been ignored. They met in a dimly lit cafe, the air thick with the weight of their shared purpose. The journalist was intrigued enough to dig deeper into the judge's past, but the reality of their investigation was daunting. The judge was powerful and well-connected, and crossing him could come at a high price. With the journalist's help, Elaine uncovered a series of unexplained rulings that had favored the judge in shocking ways. Cases that should have seen justice served were mysteriously dismissed, and victims left without a voice. This was no ordinary judge. He was a man shrouded in a cloak of darkness, and it was becoming increasingly clear that his influence extended far beyond the courtroom. The morning of the trial dawned, and with it Elaine's resolve solidified. She had gathered a trove of evidence, enough to confront the judge head-on. But as she prepared her notes, a chilling thought struck her. What if the judge was just the tip of the iceberg? What if there were others involved, individuals who would go to any lengths to protect their secrets? As she took her seat in the courtroom, she felt a jolt of adrenaline course through her. The judge entered, his demeanor calm and collected, an unsettling contrast to the storm brewing in Elaine's heart. The trial unfolded, each testimony a reminder of the injustices that had taken place under his watch. And yet, as the prosecution presented their case, Elaine felt a growing sense of unease. Was the judge truly as untouchable as he appeared? Or could the evidence they had gathered be the catalyst for a reckoning? The tension in the air was palpable, and Elaine knew that once the confrontation began, there would be no turning back. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. As the judge prepared to take the stand, Elaine's mind raced with the implications of her next move. With her heart pounding, she made her decision. She would confront him, right there in the courtroom, in front of everyone. But the moment she stood to speak, she caught sight of a familiar figure in the back of the room, someone who made her blood run cold. An ally turned adversary, a piece of the puzzle she had never anticipated. Everything she thought she knew was about to unravel. The truth was not only about her brother, it was a far more intricate web of deceit that had ensnared them all. With the trial unfolding and the stakes higher than ever, Elaine knew she was standing on the precipice of revelation, or ruin. As Elaine's eyes locked onto the familiar figure, a wave of anxiety surged through her. This was not just a casual acquaintance. This was Mark, a former investigator who had once vowed to help her find the truth. But with every passing moment, doubt crept in. Was he here to support her, or had he become a cog in the very machine she sought to dismantle? With the judge's impending testimony looming, Elaine felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She had to confront the judge, but she needed to understand Mark's presence. Was he a witness to something sinister, Or was he complicit in the cover-up that had stifled her brother's case for decades? As the judge took the stand, Elaine's resolve hardened. She focused on the evidence that had surfaced, a tattered photograph of a gathering from the night her brother vanished, a gathering that marked the intersection of power and secrecy. The judge's face was a mask of composure, but she could sense the tension beneath it. With every word he spoke, Elaine felt the story of her brother's disappearance unfold in her mind, each sentence revealing layers of corruption and betrayal that twisted deeper than she had ever imagined. She caught Mark's eye, searching for reassurance, but instead found only a flicker of uncertainty that sent chills down her spine. As the judge spoke of his innocence, Elaine felt her pulse quicken. This man had presided over a case that had ruined lives, including her own. He spoke with authority, yet she could see the cracks in his facade, hints of panic lurking just beneath the surface. When the moment arrived, she stood, her voice steady yet fierce. "Your Honor, do you remember that night? The night my brother vanished? Do you remember who was there?" Gasps filled the courtroom and the judge's eyes narrowed, betraying a flicker of fear. "I've presided over many cases, Miss Turner. I can assure you I have no recollection of that night." But Elaine pressed on, laying bare the pieces of evidence she had gathered, the inconsistencies in the original investigation, and the names of those who had gone unpunished. With every word, she peeled back the layers of deception, drawing the courtroom's attention toward the shadows that had long been cast over the case. Just as the tension reached a breaking point, Mark stood, his voice trembling. "Elaine, wait!" The courtroom fell silent. Elaine's heart raced as she turned to face him. What was he about to reveal? Did he hold the key to the answers she desperately sought? Every eye in the room was upon them, and as Mark's gaze shifted between Elaine and the judge, the truth was poised on the brink of revelation. Would this confrontation lead to the justice she craved, or would it plunge her deeper into a labyrinth of lies? The room pulsed with uncertainty as the next moment hung in the balance, waiting to explode with the weight of long-held secrets. Mark took a deep breath, his voice barely a whisper. "Elaine, I didn't want to say anything before, but I know what happened that night. I saw something I've kept buried for years." The courtroom buzzed with disbelief. Elaine felt the air shift, her heart pounding as she leaned in closer, desperate to hear what he had to say. "After the party, I left a little early. I was driving home when I saw a car parked at the edge of the woods. It was strange the way it was hidden from the road. I thought nothing of it at first, but then I saw her. I saw Clara." The room fell into a heavy silence, disbelief hanging in the air like a thick fog. Clara, the woman whose disappearance had shattered lives, whose absence had cast an unrelenting shadow over her family. Mark continued, his eyes wide with the weight of his confession. "She was with someone I recognized. It was Jason, her boyfriend at the time. They were arguing, and then, I don't know what happened next. I was too far away to hear, but I saw Clara get into the car with him, and they drove off. I never thought—" His voice trailed off, regret clouding his features. Elaine's mind raced. Jason, the golden boy, the one who seemed to have it all together, was now at the center of this horrifying revelation. Could he have been involved in her disappearance? She turned to the judge, her voice steady. "Your Honor, we need to reopen this case." "There's a witness, someone who has crucial information." The judge nodded slowly, weighing the gravity of the moment. Meanwhile, Elaine's resolve hardened. She knew she had to investigate Jason, but the deeper she dug, the more she unearthed secrets that would make anyone shudder. Her investigation led her to the dark underbelly of their small town, where whispers of hidden lives and clandestine activities thrived. A web of deceit emerged, interwoven with a criminal conspiracy that extended far beyond what she could have imagined. As Elaine connected the dots, she stumbled upon a chilling truth. Jason had been leading a double life. By day, he was the charming boyfriend, but by night he was entangled with a group known for their dangerous dealings, drug trafficking, extortion, and worse. It became painfully clear that Clara's disappearance was no mere accident, but part of a sinister plot that had ensnared her in the chaos of Jason's hidden world. Elaine felt the weight of betrayal heavy in her chest. The man she had once seen as a victim was now the source of the pain that had haunted her family for years. With this knowledge, she faced a new challenge. Convincing the authorities to see Jason for who he really was would not be easy. The skepticism she faced from them was palpable, as they were reluctant to dig deeper into a case they had long deemed closed. But Elaine refused to back down. She was fueled by the memory of Clara, her sister, and the hope that justice could still be served. As she prepared to confront Jason, one question remained. How far was she willing to go to uncover the truth? The courtroom buzzed again, and Elaine knew she had to act quickly. The moment was critical. Every second counted. As she looked around, she wondered how many others were hiding in plain sight. Elaine understood that confronting Jason would be no small feat. He had spent decades entrenched in a world of shadows, and to unearth the truth, she needed to navigate those very shadows herself. The first step was to gather evidence that could support her claims, evidence that would force the authorities to reconsider their stance. She began by revisiting old records and police reports, scouring through the details that had once been dismissed. Each page turned felt like peeling back layers of time, revealing glimpses of an intricate web of deception. There were names mentioned in the margins, individuals who had been overlooked, people who had crossed paths with Jason during that fateful time. With each contact Elaine reached out to, she encountered whispers of fear and silence. Many were hesitant to speak, as if the shadows still held power over them. Yet a few shared fragments of their own stories, tales of intimidation and threats linked to Jason's past. It became evident that Clara's disappearance was not an isolated incident. Elaine pressed on, determined to find a connection between Jason and the individuals who had once surrounded Clara. One name kept resurfacing, a local businessman known for his shady dealings. Rumors circulated that he had a close alliance with Jason, and many suggested that he had been involved in illicit activities that could explain Clara's fate. As she dove deeper, Elaine unearthed a chilling piece of information. This businessman had connections to law enforcement, his influence stretching far and wide. The realization sent a shiver down her spine. The very people meant to protect her family could be complicit in the conspiracy. With mounting pressure and mounting stakes, Elaine's investigation took her to the heart of a clandestine network that had thrived in the shadows. She began documenting her findings meticulously, creating a timeline that illustrated the connections between Jason, the businessman, and the series of disappearances that had plagued their community. In the dead of night, she organized her notes, a tapestry of evidence that painted a darker picture than she had ever imagined. The fear of what she might uncover lingered like a heavy fog, but it was nothing compared to the urgency she felt to bring justice to Clara. Elaine soon found herself on the cusp of the confrontation she had both dreaded and anticipated. Armed with her research, she contacted a journalist known for covering cold cases, hoping to shine a light on her sister's story. But even as she prepared for this next step, doubt gnawed at her. What if they silenced her too? What if the truth was too dangerous to reveal? As she sat in her living room, surrounded by files and photographs of Clara, Elaine realized that this was not just about her sister anymore. It was about exposing a long-standing corruption that had festered unchecked, a fight that could potentially save others from the same fate. With a deep breath, she made the call to the journalist, her heart racing. As she spoke, she felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. But with hope came the undeniable reality that the deeper she dug, the closer she came to a truth that could shatter everything she thought she knew. As the conversation progressed, a chilling thought crossed her mind. What if uncovering Clara's truth meant unearthing secrets that some would do anything to keep buried? Elaine could feel the ground shifting beneath her, and she knew that the next steps could lead her into a labyrinth of danger. The clock was ticking, and she was running out of time. The following weeks were a blur of meetings, late nights, and frantic phone calls. Elaine found herself immersed in the world of investigative journalism, working closely with the journalist who had once been a stranger, but was now a crucial ally. Together they combed through decades-old records, piecing together Clara's life and the shadowy circumstances surrounding her disappearance. Each document they reviewed, every interview they conducted, added to a tapestry of intrigue. They discovered that Clara had been known for her tenacity, often standing up against injustice. This revelation sent shivers down Elaine's spine. Could her sister's bold spirit have made her a target? As they delved deeper, they began to unearth troubling patterns of behavior from those who were supposed to uphold the law. Despite the weight of the past bearing down on her, Elaine remained resolute, fueled by an unwavering determination to honor Clara's memory. Yet with each discovery, she felt the oppressive presence of fear inching closer. The skepticism they faced from law enforcement was palpable, and Elaine often felt as though she was shouting into a void. As she and the journalist dug deeper, they stumbled upon a cache of documents that had been overlooked in the archives. Among these papers was a set of police reports detailing suspicious sightings of Clara on the night of her disappearance, sightings that had been conveniently ignored by investigators at the time. Each mention of a possible lead only intensified Elaine's frustration, as it became clear that someone had intentionally kept the truth at bay. But then came the bombshell. A name surfaced, a name that sent chills down Elaine's spine, the judge who had recently been arrested. His connection to Clara was tenuous at best, yet the implications were monumental. What secrets could this man hold? Was there a chance he had played a role in her sister's fate? Armed with this new information, Elaine pressed the journalist for a way to confront the judge. The journalist hesitated, knowing the risks involved in confronting a figure of such power, but Elaine was undeterred. She believed that to move forward, they needed to put pressure on those who had buried the case. As they formulated a plan, Elaine felt the weight of the past pressing down on her like never before. She was no longer just a sister searching for answers. She was a whistleblower, ready to shine a light on a truth that had been hidden for far too long. But the closer they got to the heart of the matter, the more she felt eyes watching her, a sense of impending danger lurking just beneath the surface. The night before the planned confrontation with the judge, Elaine experienced a restless sleep filled with nightmares of Clara's face, distorted and pleading. She woke in a cold sweat, her mind racing. Was she prepared for what lay ahead? Would she be able to face a man who might hold the keys to her sister's past? The following morning, as she prepared to meet the journalist and head toward the courthouse, a sense of unease settled over her. The stakes had never been higher, and the truth was waiting just beyond the reach of her fingertips. Little did she know the confrontation would unearth a complex web of deceit, betrayal, and darkness that had long remained hidden in the shadows. The day of reckoning was upon her, and the path to justice was fraught with peril. Elaine arrived at the courthouse with a heavy heart, each step echoing with the weight of her sister's memory. She felt a mix of determination and dread, her thoughts swirling with the implications of what she might uncover. The journalist, Mark, was already waiting for her. His expression was serious, the gravity of the situation clear in his eyes. As they entered the building, the air felt thick with tension. Elaine couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that unseen forces were aware of their every move. They navigated the halls lined with cold marble, past indifferent clerks and busy attorneys, all while Elaine's mind raced with questions. What secrets did the judge hold? Would he deny everything, or would he crumble under the pressure of their inquiry? They reached the judge's chambers, and Mark knocked firmly on the door. Moments later it creaked open, revealing a man whose demeanor was calm, almost too calm. The judge's eyes narrowed slightly as he took in the sight of Elaine and Mark standing before him, a casual air about him that belied the seriousness of their mission. "Can I help you?" he asked, a hint of irritation in his voice. But Elaine noticed something flicker behind his composed exterior, a brief flash of recognition, as though he remembered her from the past. With a deep breath, Elaine stepped forward. "We need to talk about my sister, Clara. We believe you have information that could help us find out what happened to her." The judge's expression shifted, the veneer of confidence cracking for just a moment. "That was a long time ago. There's nothing more to discuss." His dismissal was curt, but Elaine refused to back down. "People have been talking, new evidence has come to light, and I know you were involved in her case." Elaine's voice held a steadiness she didn't quite feel. The words hung in the air, taut with accusation. The judge's eyes darkened, and for a fleeting moment fear crossed his face, replaced quickly by anger. "You have no idea what you're getting into. I advise you to drop this." Elaine's heart raced. She had struck a nerve. "Is that a threat?" she demanded, her voice rising. "Call it a warning," he replied, his tone icy. "Some things are better left buried." Mark moved closer, sensing the escalating tension. "We're not going anywhere. The truth deserves to be uncovered, and we'll make sure it sees the light of day." The judge stepped back, a calculating look crossing his face. "You think you're so clever, don't you? But you're playing a dangerous game." He leaned forward, his tone low and menacing. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Elaine felt a chill run down her spine. The implications of his words were unmistakable. As the confrontation intensified, her resolve wavered momentarily. Yet the memory of Clara's face, the pain of years lost, reignited her determination. But just as the tension reached a boiling point, the judge's demeanor shifted again. He straightened up, a mask of indifference returning as he gestured toward the door. "I won't say this again. Leave now while you still can." With the judge's dismissal hanging heavily in the air, Elaine felt a surge of frustration. They had come too far to walk away empty-handed. As they turned to leave, a quiet resolve settled over her. This was just the beginning. The judge's warning only fueled her determination to dig deeper. As they exited the courthouse, Elaine's mind raced with possibilities. What did he know? What was he hiding? The answers were still out of reach, but she could feel the pieces of a much larger puzzle beginning to fall into place. The shadows were closing in, but she was ready to face them head-on. The investigation was far from over, and Elaine knew that the next steps would be perilous. But the truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, and she would not stop until she had it in her grasp. Days turned into weeks, as Elaine meticulously combed through every detail of the case, her determination unwavering. She revisited the cold files, pages yellowed with age, scrutinizing every line, searching for connections that had eluded investigators for decades. She spent countless hours interviewing witnesses, some of whom had long since moved away, their memories hazy, yet haunted by the past. One evening, as she pored over newspaper clippings in her dimly lit living room, a particular article caught her eye. It was an old piece covering the judge's rise to prominence in the community, detailing his early career as a defense attorney. But one line stood out, a mention of a controversial case involving a missing person, eerily similar to Clara's. It was a case that had vanished from public consciousness, overshadowed by the judge's subsequent accolades. With renewed vigor, Elaine sought out local archives, digging deeper into the judge's past. Each lead led her down dark corridors of secrecy, uncovering whispers of a network that had long protected its own. As she pieced together this tangled web, she noticed a pattern. People who had vanished under suspicious circumstances often had ties to the judge or his associates. Then, one fateful afternoon, she received an unexpected call from an anonymous source. The voice on the other end trembled with urgency. "You need to be careful. There are things about the judge that go deeper than you realize. He's been covering for people, dangerous people." The weight of the revelation hit her like a thunderclap. The judge was not just a passive observer, he was a pivotal player in something far more sinister. With this new information, Elaine pushed further, reaching out to former colleagues of the judge who had long left the legal world, hoping to find someone willing to speak up. As she continued her investigation, Elaine faced increasing pushback. Phone calls went unanswered. Doors were shut in her face and rumors swirled about her intentions. Yet each obstacle only fueled her resolve. She uncovered old court documents that hinted at a much larger conspiracy, one that involved not only the judge but others in positions of power, lawyers, police officers, and even local politicians. The pieces were beginning to fit together, but they formed a picture more horrifying than she had ever imagined. Each revelation painted the judge as a guardian of secrets, a man who had wielded his power to protect those who preyed on the vulnerable. Then, just when Elaine thought she was closing in on the truth, she received a chilling warning. This time, not from a source, but from a familiar voice, one that sent shivers down her spine. "Stop digging, Elaine. You have no idea what you're up against." The call ended abruptly, leaving her breathless. Fear coursed through her veins, but she knew she could not turn back. The stakes had never been higher. Clara's story was intertwined with a darkness that stretched far beyond a single disappearance. As she prepared for the next phase of her investigation, the confrontation she had been dreading loomed closer. The judge was not just a man in a black robe. He was a puppet master, and soon Elaine would be ready to pull back the curtain on his web of deception. The truth was out there, waiting to be unveiled, but it would come at a cost she was now willing to pay. The days that followed were a blur of anxiety and determination for Elaine. She delved deeper into her research, poring over public records, interviewing old acquaintances, and tracing the judge's past. Each lead seemed to shine a light on a darker reality, revealing a network of corruption that ran deeper than she had ever anticipated. Her once solitary journey now felt like a race against time, each tick of the clock amplifying the urgency in her heart. The judge's arrest had sent ripples through the community, but now his loyal supporters were growing restless. Rumors began to swirl, and Elaine found herself under the watchful eyes of those who had everything to lose if the truth was revealed. One evening, while sifting through old newspaper articles, Elaine stumbled upon a photograph that stopped her cold. It depicted a charity event from the early 1980s, featuring the judge alongside prominent local business owners. But what caught her attention was the woman standing beside him, Clara. She was smiling, a stark contrast to the pain etched in her family's memory. This was the first time Elaine had seen her so carefree. The photograph became a portal into the past, leading Elaine to dig deeper into the judge's connections. She discovered that several individuals from that photograph had been involved in questionable dealings, including missing persons cases and shady real estate transactions. The web was growing tighter, each thread pulling Elaine closer to the center of the storm. But as she began to connect the dots, she felt an oppressive weight bearing down on her. A sinister presence lurked in the shadows, watching her every move. Late one night, while compiling her findings, she heard a faint knock at her door. Her heart raced as she approached, peering through the peephole. No one was there, just the darkness of the night. The following day, Elaine received an anonymous package at her office. Inside lay a stack of documents, evidence perhaps, but they were too cryptic to decipher immediately. What she could make out, however, sent chills down her spine. They hinted at a cover-up involving not just the judge, but law enforcement officials who had turned a blind eye to the truth. The documents bore a warning: leave it alone, or you'll regret it. The threats only fueled her resolve. She reached out to an investigative journalist she had heard about through a former colleague. Together, they began to piece together a timeline that linked Clara's disappearance to a series of unexplained events surrounding the judge's career. Each revelation led them closer to a revelation so shocking it felt unreal. Yet, just when the pieces began to align, Elaine received a call that shattered her focus. The journalist had vanished, last seen following a lead related to the judge. Panic surged within her, solidifying her belief that she was on the right track, but also revealing the very real danger of her pursuit. Elaine knew she was nearing the confrontation she had dreaded. The truth was no longer a distant goal, it was a menacing reality that demanded to be faced. The walls were closing in, and she had to decide. Would she expose the judge and risk everything, or would she continue to dig, knowing the potential consequences? As the days turned into nights, the tension mounted, and Elaine prepared herself for what was to come. The judge's trial was approaching, and with it the chance to finally unveil the truth. But first, she had to confront the shadows that had kept Clara's story hidden for too long. The moment of reckoning was drawing near, and Elaine was determined to shine a light on the darkness once and for all. Elaine spent long hours poring over her notes, piecing together the fragmented puzzle of Clara's disappearance. Each lead she followed seemed to wrap around the judge like a shroud, thickening the mystery that had shrouded the case for decades. The more she uncovered, the clearer it became. The judge was not the man he appeared to be. With the trial looming, Elaine reached out to the families of other missing individuals, seeking connections and patterns. Each conversation unearthed chilling similarities. The judge had presided over numerous cases involving marginalized victims, those often overlooked by the system. What had begun as a search for her sister had turned into a deeper investigation, into a possible conspiracy that stretched far beyond Clara. The night before the trial, Elaine received an anonymous tip. A message appeared in her inbox, cryptic yet compelling. "Meet me at the old courthouse at midnight." Her heart raced. This could be the breakthrough she had been waiting for, but it also felt like a trap. Nonetheless, she felt compelled to go. Clara's memory urged her forward, a silent plea for justice that echoed in her mind. Under the pale glow of a flickering streetlight, Elaine approached the deserted courthouse. The air was thick with tension, the shadows seeming to whisper secrets long buried. She waited, her heart pounding, when suddenly a figure emerged from the darkness. It was a man, his face obscured by a hood. "I know what you're searching for," he said, his voice low and urgent. "But it's more dangerous than you realize." As Elaine listened, the man shared disturbing information about the judge's connections to powerful figures involved in organized crime. He spoke of a cover-up that extended beyond Clara, implicating others who had vanished under suspicious circumstances. This was no mere coincidence. It was a calculated effort to silence those who threatened the judge's facade. Just then, the man glanced over his shoulder, fear flashing across his face. "You need to be careful. They're watching you." In an instant, he vanished back into the shadows, leaving Elaine alone and shaken. The gravity of what she had just learned settled heavily on her shoulders. The judge's trial was not just about Clara anymore. It was about exposing a corrupt system that had enabled years of suffering. Elaine returned home, her mind racing with the implications of the man's warning. She knew that revealing this truth could bring devastating consequences, not just for herself, but for anyone associated with her. As the trial approached, Elaine fortified her resolve. She had to confront the judge, to force him into the light, to make him answer for Clara and for all the others lost to his web of deceit. But she also understood that the stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. The confrontation loomed like a storm cloud on the horizon, and Elaine braced herself for the tempest that was about to unfold. Elaine spent the days leading up to the trial buried in research, sifting through old case files, newspaper clippings, and digital archives. Each piece of information felt like a shard of glass, cutting deeper into her conviction. She was driven not only by the desire for justice for Clara, but also by the need to protect the other potential victims hidden beneath the surface of the judge's influence. As the day of the trial drew nearer, the tension in the air thickened. Elaine could feel the weight of the community's eyes upon her, some filled with hope and others clouded with fear. In whispered conversations, people warned her about the judge's power, recounting stories of those who had dared to cross him, only to disappear into obscurity. But Elaine held on to her determination, refusing to be silenced. When the courtroom doors finally opened, she stepped inside, her heart racing. The air crackled with an electric energy, but the reality of the situation hit her hard. The judge sat at the front, his demeanor calm, almost smug. It was as if he was aware of the turmoil he had caused and found amusement in it. Elaine watched him closely, searching for any sign of guilt, any flicker of remorse. But the man who had taken so much from so many wore an expression of confidence, as if he believed he was untouchable. The prosecutor began to outline the evidence against him, but Elaine's focus remained on the judge. Each word sounded distant, as her mind raced with thoughts of Clara and the others who had been silenced. As the prosecution presented their case, Elaine felt a growing unease. The evidence, while compelling, felt like it danced around the edges of the truth. She recalled the man's warning from the alley and the lives intertwined with the judge's reign. What if this trial was just a performance, a way to placate the public while the deeper, darker truth remained buried? Then, during a recess, Elaine caught sight of a figure lingering in the hallway. It was the same man who had warned her before. He looked more frantic now, glancing around as if he feared being seen. She approached him, desperation in her voice. "What do you know? Please, I need to understand." His eyes darted nervously and he spoke in hushed tones. "You have to be careful. There's more at stake than you realize. The judge isn't working alone." Elaine's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" He leaned closer. "People are involved. People who would do anything to protect him. Clara's case is just the tip of an iceberg. There are others who have disappeared, others who knew too much. Before she could press further, he stepped back into the shadows, leaving Elaine with more questions than answers. The weight of the impending confrontation loomed larger than ever, but now she understood that exposing the judge would mean unraveling a much larger conspiracy. As the trial resumed, Elaine felt an urgency driving her. The truth was closer than ever, but she needed to connect the dots. Who were these others? What had they seen? The clock was ticking, and with each passing moment, she could sense the danger tightening around her like a noose. With renewed determination, she prepared to take the next step. The confrontation with the judge was imminent, but it was clear now that this was not merely a battle of right versus wrong. It was a fight against a powerful system entrenched in secrecy and fear. The truth was a dangerous weapon, and Elaine was ready to wield it. But she had to tread carefully, for in the shadows the threat was more pervasive than she could have ever imagined. In the days that followed, Elaine delved deeper into her investigation, armed with the newfound knowledge that Clara's disappearance was just one piece of a larger puzzle. She began to explore every angle. Night after night, she sifted through old newspapers, court records, and public documents, searching for any mention of others who had vanished without a trace. The more she uncovered, the more she realized the extent of the web woven by the judge and his allies. There were whispers of a cover-up, a network of silence that had surrounded Clara's case for decades. As she pieced together the fragments of information, a pattern began to emerge. Each disappearance seemed linked by a common thread, a shared connection to the judge himself. With every clue, Elaine felt the weight of her mission intensify. It wasn't just about Clara anymore. It was about justice for all those who had been silenced. But with each revelation came a sense of dread. The closer she got to the truth, the more threatening the shadows around her became. Strange cars began to follow her home, and she received unsettling phone calls late at night, punctuated by heavy breathing and silence. Despite the fear that gripped her, Elaine pressed on. She reached out to former friends of Clara's, individuals who might hold pieces of the puzzle. Some were hesitant to speak, their fear palpable, while others were more willing to share their stories. They described Clara's growing unease in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, her fear of someone in power, a fear that now seemed justified. Then came a breakthrough that sent shivers down her spine. One of Clara's friends revealed that she had kept a journal, documenting her suspicions about the judge and others close to him. It was said to contain names, dates, and events that could shake the very foundation of the local justice system. But the journal had disappeared alongside Clara, leaving behind only vague memories of its contents. Fueled by this lead, Elaine reached out to the friend, hoping she could shed light on the journal's whereabouts. As they spoke, the conversation took a sinister turn. The friend's voice trembled as she recounted a chilling encounter with an unknown figure who had warned her to forget about Clara, to stay silent. The fear in her voice echoed Elaine's own, but it also ignited a fierce determination within her. With each passing day, Elaine's resolve grew stronger. She began to assemble a dossier, compiling everything she had learned and preparing herself for the confrontation she had been dreading. The judge was due to appear at a public event soon, a chance for Elaine to confront him directly. But just as she was readying herself for this pivotal moment, a shocking twist emerged. An anonymous tip came through, revealing that the judge had been implicated in a series of unsolved cases that had been buried under layers of corruption. This tip provided her with the names of individuals who had been close to Clara, individuals who were now at risk. As Elaine prepared to reveal the truth, she understood that she wasn't just fighting for Clara anymore. She was fighting for the safety of those who had been silenced, for the families who had suffered in the shadows. The stakes had never been higher, and as she stood on the precipice of confrontation, she steeled herself for the battle ahead. The truth was finally within reach, but the darkness surrounding it was more formidable than she had ever imagined. Elaine knew that the upcoming public event could be the turning point she had been waiting for. As she reviewed her notes, the weight of what she was about to do settled heavily on her shoulders. The judge, once a revered figure in the community, now loomed over her as an embodiment of betrayal and fear. His potential involvement in a web of corruption and crime was a chilling revelation, but it also fueled her determination to seek justice for Clara. Days passed, each one filled with a growing sense of urgency. The anonymous tipster had provided names, individuals who had brushed shoulders with the judge, people who had vanished or suffered mysterious fates over the years. Elaine felt a swell of responsibility. If she didn't speak out, these secrets would remain buried, and more lives could be at risk. As the day of the event approached, Elaine reached out to a few trusted friends. They shared her passion for uncovering the truth and understood the peril involved. Together, they devised a plan to confront the judge publicly, to shine a light on the darkness that had enveloped so many for too long. They would gather evidence, testimonies, and anything that could support their claims, building a case that could no longer be ignored. On the day of the event, a palpable tension hung in the air. Elaine arrived early, her heart racing as she surveyed the bustling crowd. The judge was scheduled to speak, and she needed to be prepared. She clutched her dossier tightly, knowing it contained not only her findings, but also the voices of those who had been silenced. As the moment drew closer, Elaine's anxiety morphed into resolve. She spotted the judge across the room laughing and engaging with supporters, a stark contrast to the grim reality she had uncovered. The duality of his public persona and the darkness beneath it felt surreal, and she knew she had to shatter that illusion. When the judge took the stage, Elaine's heart pounded in her chest. She felt the weight of the lives lost, the families shattered, and the anger of those who had been wronged. She waited, watching as he spoke about justice and community, all the while knowing how many had suffered under his watch. Just as he began to wrap up his speech, Elaine stepped forward, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. She called out his name, the crowd's murmurs quieting as they turned to see what was happening. The judge's smile faltered, recognition dawning in his eyes as she approached. With unwavering conviction, Elaine revealed the anonymous tip, the names of those who had vanished, and the damning implications of his involvement. Gasps echoed through the audience as she laid bare the truths that had been hidden for decades. The air was charged with disbelief and tension as the judge's demeanor shifted from confidence to unease. But before she could finish, a figure in the crowd shouted, claiming that Elaine was spreading lies, that she had no proof. It was a calculated move, and she felt the ground shift beneath her. The judge's supporters rallied, casting doubt on her claims, and for a moment despair threatened to wash over her. Yet, in that moment of chaos, she caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd, someone she had never expected to see. A figure from Clara's past had emerged, a potential ally who could provide the missing link, the evidence that could turn the tide in her favor. Elaine's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the urgency of the moment. The confrontation wasn't over. It was only just beginning. With renewed strength, she pressed on, knowing that the truth was closer than ever, but the battle would require every ounce of courage she had left. The darkness was formidable, but so was her resolve to bring it into the light. As the courtroom buzzed with whispers and disbelief, Elaine stepped forward, her voice steady and resolute. The figure from Clara's past, a former friend who had witnessed the events leading up to the disappearance, stepped into the light. With trembling hands, they handed over a collection of letters and photographs, evidence that had been hidden for too long. This was the key that would unravel the twisted tale of betrayal and deception. With the new evidence in hand, the authorities were forced to reopen the case. The past that had haunted Clara's family for years began to surface. It was revealed that she had been living a double life, embroiled in a dangerous world that intertwined with those who sought to exploit her. The letters detailed her fears, her struggles, and the individuals who had manipulated her circumstances, leading to her tragic fate. In a stunning turn of events, the individuals responsible were brought to justice. Those who once cast doubt on Elaine's quest for the truth now found themselves facing serious charges. The community that had once turned a blind eye began to rally around Clara's family, offering support and solidarity. As the final verdict echoed through the courthouse, Elaine felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. The truth had emerged, but it came at a heavy cost. Clara would never return, and the pain of her absence would forever linger. Yet, the knowledge that justice had been served brought a semblance of closure. Elaine stood outside the courthouse, reflecting on the journey. She had learned that the pursuit of truth is often fraught with darkness, but it is also a testament to resilience. The case had exposed not only the fragility of life, but the strength found in community and the unwavering commitment to justice. In the end, Clara's story is a reminder of the shadows that can cloak our lives and the courage it takes to bring them to light. It urges us to listen to the voices of those who suffer in silence and to never forget that every disappearance tells a story worth uncovering. As we close this chapter, we are left with a haunting question. How many more truths remain buried, waiting for someone to uncover them?